Yeah, I always knew I wanted to build wealth, and I knew property was one of those vehicles. So when I converted my residential to a buy-to-let and then serviced accommodation, I didn't even know if it was going to work. I was actually quite nervous about doing it. Got it live and up and running in November 2023, and yeah, I've had pretty much 90% occupancy since.
Wow.
And sometimes you don't really know if something's going to work out until you actually do it.
Hello and welcome to the Self Unemployed Podcast, where we talk about the journey to financial independence and becoming self-unemployed. So my guest today is Jag Khalsa, who is a property investor. Why don't you tell us a bit more about what you do?
Yeah, so thanks for having me on, Colin. Really appreciate it. So at the moment I have my own serviced accommodation business. I have just taken on a unit in Banbury.
Mm-hmm.
Get the keys next week. So that'll be my 6th property. So I own one unit at the moment, and then I do rent to rent on the other 5. So that's sort of my business structure at the moment.
So you're doing SA on all of them?
On all of them.
One of them is you own and the other rent to rent? Yeah.
That's right, yeah.
Awesome.
So yeah, that's gone pretty well. I've scaled that within about 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
Some of it I've used my own money, some of it I've had to raise finance on. And then now I'm in a position where I'm looking to buy properties. So I'm looking at pre-auction offers, bridging finance and all of that.
Yeah. So you'll be looking to rent through, so as a SA rather than single lets.
Yeah. I mean, I had a single let back in, so it was a single let up until August 2023, and then I spent a couple of months just refurbing it. Got it live and up and running in November 2023, and yeah, I've had pretty much 90% occupancy since.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's pretty good.
It's pretty awesome. But yeah, the single let was probably making me about £200 a month.
Yeah.
And now it's averaging roughly 1,500 to 1,600.
And that would have been before the interest rate rise.
Yeah, so I was lucky enough to fix the interest for 2 years.
Yeah.
So my interest, it was a residential mortgage previously with a high street bank.
Yeah.
And it was at something like 1.4%, which is ridiculous. Yeah. So yeah, that product or that mortgage term ran out in April last year, and I managed to refinance it as a buy-to-let.
Right.
So I pulled some equity out of that, and obviously now I'm in a position where I can invest.
Yeah.
Really.
So if it was still a single let, that you wouldn't be making 200 a month.
No.
So because 200 a month is in this climate is quite good.
Yeah.
Which makes you think, hang on, that's why people say buy to let is dead now.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. It can work, and it it depends on the capital appreciation of where you are in the country. I think I just learnt Manchester's about 24% capital appreciation. It's going to increase in the next sort of 2 years. So that's something I just learnt today. But yeah, I think it does depend on the area.
Yeah, so it can work, but you just have to have a very long-term view, and don't expect to make any cash flow out of it in the meantime.
Yeah, and serviced accommodation won't always work in every single area. I think if you own property, as in it's your own house or property, I think you can test the waters, and sometimes you don't really know if something's going to work out until you actually do it. So I think that the risk is a lot less. So when I converted my residential to a buy-to-let and then serviced accommodation, I didn't even know if it was going to work. I was actually quite nervous about doing it. And I even was thinking, is this going to work? But I just went through with it anyway. In my head, the worst case scenario was it doesn't work out. I put the furniture into another SA.
Yeah.
And, there's no loss really in that sense.
Because a lot of the investment is furniture that you get to keep. And,
exactly, yeah. So that's that was my thinking really. But yeah, if you're doing rent to rent, it's a lot different. You have to do your due diligence. Yeah. Obviously, you're paying for the rent, which is a lot higher than your mortgage would be, plus the deposit and the furniture and like bedding and towels. You'd be surprised how expensive bedding and towels is as well. It is mount up.
Yeah. Because I guess you've got to get it replaced quite regularly.
That, and plus you need,
Sets.
now that I've done it with 5 units, I think having 3 sets is wise. 2 is very, very difficult to manage, especially when it comes to the cleaner, washing, drying, ironing. I think it's best just to have 3, and then, if you've got a 3-bed house with zip-link beds, that's like 6 single beds, and so you can imagine the bedding.
So then you need a single bed, 3 sets of the single beds, plus
towels,
2 sets of the, if people want the double option.
Plus, if there's a long or medium term guest, you'd want extra bedding for them as well, or extra towels. So it does all mount up. So yeah, bedding can be quite expensive, and depending on your turnover, as in how often you're having guests in, it's sometimes better just to get a company that does the linens for you, that can drop off, and then that's less pressure on the cleaner then. So it just depends on the area. You've got to do it and then work it out from then on. Definitely.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll get more into your business and service accommodation in general, but I want to know more about you. I know that we've got some things in common.
We do.
But let's go back before that. Tell us where were you? Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
Yeah, so I was born in Wolverhampton.
Okay.
I still live there now.
Right.
So I lived there my whole life. I started a wedding photography and video business going back about 12 years now. So I've not really been employed for that amount of time. And you almost forget what it's like to work a 9-to-5 job, especially when you're quite flexible on hours.
And that's the thing that we've got in common, because I also used to do wedding videos, but it was just a long time ago. I'm talking like 2002.
Yeah.
And I think it's changed a lot. It would have, I wouldn't have been able to outsource to an editor abroad.
Massively, it's changed. The technology's changed. The editing style, the turnaround, the expectations, the market,
the delivery. You probably do you even do physical delivery, or do you just upload it?
No, I stopped DVDs back in 2012.
Yeah,
probably just before that actually, and then it was just USB.
Okay.
From then on, and now it's more digital. So, sort of
as in
Vimeo, YouTube, that kind of Dropbox, that kind of delivery. Everyone's got smartphones, iPads,
or you can even play it on a TV. Just put it on a pen drive.
Yeah, you can just stream it.
Yeah.
Streaming's just taken over now completely. And also, I think the way people consume content has changed. We used to edit videos and trailers that were like 3-4 minutes long, but now even that's reduced to like 1-minute teaser trailers, and the reels and the short content. Like everyone's attention spans just completely
it's like when I did
changed.
the full version, which would be like an hour and a half.
Yeah.
And then I do like a highlights, which is like 25 minutes.
Yeah. That is completely changed on its head. Now it's 10 to 15 minute sort of highlight and then a 1-minute teaser trailer. That's kind of the going thing. And now content creation's a big thing as well, especially in the US. Probably not so much in the UK, but in the US, you've got content creators that will film a wedding on their iPhone and they'll just edit it and deliver it the same day. And there's couples that just want the whole content creation buzz and not necessarily want to watch a film that's an hour long.
Yeah. So instead of a wedding video, they want like a bunch of reels that they can put on their Instagram.
Yeah. And it's become more of a fashion, and tagging their friends and family, and it's just become a different way of consuming content. So it's and with AI as well, that's a whole different topic. With editing videos with AI.
Yeah, well, I use AI on these to make the reels on the podcast. I mean, I don't completely rely on it, but
it's a good base reason, isn't it? And even with audio, correcting audio, especially wind reduction and stuff like that, that's completely changed. So it's technology changing. I think you have to adapt with it 100%. It's the same with when we went from film to digital. That was a massive leap for a lot of people.
Yeah.
And a lot of photographers just didn't want to. They just want to
yeah,
stick
and
with
they
film.
all say, "Oh no, it's not as good quality" and stuff like that. It's like it pretty much is.
Yeah,
But, and there's so many other advantages as well.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, but yeah. So you're still doing that, right? But
Yeah, I've taken. I'm not doing as much. I think now I've got the choice. Before I didn't. It was something where, as a self-employed business. I mean, it wasn't even a business really, because I had to work in the business, and it just felt like worse than a 9 to 5 actually, because, and this is probably true for most people that are self-employed, that there's no kind of structure. Usually it's just whenever, and sometimes it's weekend work, especially in the wedding industry.
yeah,
And then I've got kids as well, and they've grown up. My kids are 13 and 10. And so you feel guilty, like taking time off, in the holidays, especially with the wedding industry and how it works. You almost feel guilty taking, time off to go and work when they're off on holidays and things like that. So, yeah, that was something on the back of my mind. And the editing as well, the post-production, that's quite intense, as you know yourself.
yeah. It's just very very time consuming, and it gets pretty boring editing other people's wedding videos.
Yeah, and it's quite a lonely job or business, really. Even though you're working with couples and suppliers and other things, you don't really get to connect with other people because you're working on your own.
Yeah.
Unless you've got a big team.
But to what extent did you systemize it and outsource stuff?
So this was probably pre-pandemic. I was thinking about having editors or having a team in place. So I started small steps first. So I would get an editor to just maybe go through the footage and just do maybe like a skeleton edit. And then I would go in and then finish the edit off. If I had events where they were overlapping, or there was quite a big distance to travel between the 2 days, for example, I would have another team that would cover that. So pre-pandemic, I was already doing that.
Yeah.
And then when the pandemic hit, I was forced to do it. And I think at that point, the penny dropped, because you're forced to do something, especially with the rules. And, if someone was tested positive for COVID, then you'd have to stay home and isolate and all of that. So all that happened. So I think a lot of people, especially with businesses where you rely on the actual person themselves, they had to either find someone else to do their job for them, or a lot of people did just pack it in, especially even wedding venues couldn't survive the pandemic. So
did you find you were getting more work because other competitors were shutting down?
There was like a massive rush of couples that had postponed their wedding as well.
Yeah, because they had to do 3 years worth of weddings.
Yeah, that's right. And then on top of that, you had couples that probably didn't. I don't know if this is true actually, but I don't know if it's been proven. But there's a engagement gap. So couples that never met during the pandemic wouldn't have got engaged because there was a distance and it was all kind of online, and so that social interaction. So there was couples that were already engaged, planning to get married.
Yeah.
But then, obviously, couples wouldn't be socialising and meeting. So then, there's almost like a gap where there's couples that haven't got engaged, and then obviously they've not got married.
Right.
So now, after 2 years, so like 2022, 2023, there was a massive rush of weddings, and then it was just like a sudden drop. But yeah, everything's changed like after the pandemic.
Yeah.
Every industry's had an impact, I think.
Yeah. Because did you use like a VA or someone to edit who's somewhere else?
Yeah, I did, because I knew I was getting so many weddings coming up. I had to get an editor in. So I trialed and tested probably 3 or 4 editors, and then I actually found one that I liked. And then I've just stuck with that editor since 2023, summer 2023. So that same editor. So it kind of got me in a position where I didn't have to spend so much time editing and post-production. And so, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at now, where I can choose if I want to take on any work in terms of weddings.
But it's, it's for both property business and a wedding video business. Is the systemizing things is so important.
Yeah.
And running a podcast.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And I spent a lot of time during the first few episodes, creating a system and a checklist of all the things I've got to do. And I was planning to do everything myself, but I've taken on a editor as well, so shout out to them.
Yeah, definitely. I think
be the first to see this.
Yeah, I think we're not used to delegating.
Yeah.
And even going back to school, you don't learn how to delegate. You have to do everything yourself.
You're told not to.
Yeah.
That's called cheating.
Yeah. And then even when you leave school, even like college or university, it's the same thing really. You're not really taught to leverage off other people, because that's, like you said, it's called cheating. So getting out of that mindset, it's a difficult one. I think you have to surround yourself with other people that are.
But it is also a whole other skill in itself.
Yeah.
Because sometimes you might spend a long time describing what you want someone else to do, to the point where you think, well, I spend so much time describing this, I might as well do it myself.
Yeah.
It's for the podcast, it's worth it because it's the same thing for every episode. But then also you can't rush that, because there's so many things that I do that I can't. It's difficult to explain in my process, because it's not just making the podcast. I also want to make shorter episodes.
Yeah.
And then as well as 1 minute reels. So starting with one big piece of content and then chopping it down. It is a really good way to make lots of content.
Yeah.
But then it's just so many things, because if I want to put it on Instagram, there's certain things that. So to make it in a way that works on, that you can put the same thing on all the platforms, is very difficult, because they've all got slightly different requirements.
Yeah.
So it is possible to make something that will fit all of them, but you got to be very careful.
Yeah.
In terms of length and also in the descriptions, because on LinkedIn you can put vertical videos like reels now as well, and you can put links in, but you can't on Instagram, you can't on TikTok.
Yeah.
So, just having a process to make sure that you're doing the right thing with the right platform is.
Yeah. It's the same with serviced accommodation when it comes to cleaners.
Yeah.
And finding a good power team.
Yeah.
You're forced. Now I understand why you need to write everything down, and why you have to have a process. Almost like a
checklist.
Yeah. And even like a little diagram. Like if this happens, what do you do? And if that happens, what do you do?
Oh, like a flow chart.
Yeah. And now I understand why it's so important. At the beginning, I thought, it's all right, I'll just get a cleaner. They'll handle it. They'll know what to do, but they actually don't. Probably because they haven't been trained, or they don't understand the business model.
Once they've done it a few times, then they will know.
They will,
but then it might not always be the same person. Or
so some cleaners might go on holiday, or become ill or whatever, and then you take some time off, and then I think when they then get another team in, I think that's where it falls apart. From my experience, that's what I found. So I think just doing it from the beginning is so worth it, because it will just. And if you have to replace your cleaner, which has happened in the past, I've had to replace cleaners 4 or 5 times in the last 12 months. Then you'd have to just repeat yourself, because that takes time.
Yeah.
As well, speaking to a cleaner.
So if you've already got a complete detailed instructions.
Yeah.
SOP, as they call it, standard operating procedures, then you can just give it to them, and it makes it a lot easier. Yeah,
definitely.
But it's a lot of work writing.
It is.
In the first place.
Initially, it is a lot of work, and I think that's why a lot of people just put it off. It's just easier just to tell someone what to do, and then
it's easier to tell someone what to do than it is to write it.
Yeah.
But to tell them what to do, and then to tell someone else what to do a few months down the line, and then someone else a few months down the then it's worth it in the long run.
Yeah, definitely.
I just want to quickly say thank you so much for watching, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel, and let us know what you think in the comments. I do truly believe that the content that we're putting out is going to help you on your journey to financial freedom and becoming self-unemployed. But you know what? I've got another YouTube channel where I've got 220,000 subscribers, and when I put a video out on that channel, it only gets a few hundred views. So YouTube isn't necessarily giving you the content that you want. It's giving you the content that it thinks will distract you, like cat videos or women in bikinis or whatever it is. So if you're serious about becoming financially free and self-unemployed, then you can also join my mailing list, where I will send out an email to notify you when I put out some great content like this video. So speaking of which, let's get back to the interview.
That's kind of a lot of the skills I learned from, going to weddings. It is transferable, especially with systems in place and stuff.
Yeah.
And software, like price labs, for example, bit of a minefield with that. And I still don't understand how it completely works.
Let's talk more about what that is a bit later.
Yeah.
But so you're doing wedding videos. How did you then? I think, did you say you always wanted to get into property? Or how did you go from?
Yeah, I always knew I wanted to build wealth, and I knew property was one of those vehicles. Just by looking at what other people are doing as well, family or extended family, friends, that kind of thing. And I always thought, well, I've got to save up a deposit, and just do the whole kind of normal way of saving, really.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I came across, obviously, Samuel Leeds and the Academy, and that just completely changed everything for me. So, like I said, I had a residential property already. So we moved back. So me and my wife and my kids, we moved back into our parents' house, just look after my dad and stuff. And that was back in 2020, 2022, I think. But it's funny because that pandemic just seemed like 2 or 3 years just mixed into one. And you can never differentiate between 2020, 2021 and 2022, especially with like weddings and stuff, because it was just like combined. But I moved back in to my parents in 2022. I put it on AST, kind of
so the
tenancy.
house you used to live in, you bought your own house to live in.
Yeah, about 10 years ago.
During the pandemic, you moved back in with your parents to look after your dad.
Yeah, that's right.
And and that's when you rented it out on AST.
AST, yeah. And then after sort of the pandemic and things kind of normalized, then I thought I need to get into property. I want to learn how to do this. At that point, I probably got sick and tired of weddings because we were doing 50 to 60 a year at that point. I think, and because it was the same thing every year, editing, and then you had Christmas coming up. Obviously, weddings, majority of it is seasonal, from like March till September, October time. And then you've got another 6 months of editing, and before you know it, it's back to square one. It's another season. So it was just that was just being repetitive for me. So that was, I knew that was something I had to do. I just didn't want to be doing this. So
how did you discover Samuel Leeds?
I believe it was YouTube. I think I came across Samuel on YouTube, and then obviously he's a very good marketer, both in person but also the Facebook ads and all of that. So came across Samuel Leeds on YouTube, booked a crash course. I think I attended one in September 2022. And then I rolled on to the advanced training in November. But since then it's just been on that property journey and just learning about super rent and serviced accommodation, HMO.
So for those who aren't familiar, what is What are you talking about?
Yeah, so serviced accommodation really is short-term lets or short-term stay.
Yeah.
A lot of people refer to Airbnb. So the Airbnb model, basically, that's serviced accommodation.
And
Obviously,
that's what you mean by super rents, because that's
yeah,
previously you're on an AST, assured
Mhm.
short hold tenancy,
Yeah.
which is how people normally rent a home.
Yeah.
But you can make a much more rent on as a service accommodation.
Serviced accommodation, yeah. So you can charge per night rather than per month, and then obviously you include amenities and all the bills, Wi-Fi, and anything else that you want to add in there. So it is an accommodation, but it's serviced, so you're providing that service pretty much like a hotel, but just obviously those extra amenities. And working in weddings, you tend to travel a lot, and I never really thought of even booking an Airbnb. I just always booked the kind of standard hotels, really.
Yeah, I haven't thought of it. Well, I've not really done an Airbnb in the UK. I've booked hotels through booking.com.
Yeah.
But I'm staying in an Airbnb next month in South America.
Yeah.
So, but I think I'm old school.
Yeah.
The younger people, they use Airbnb more.
Yeah. And because I was doing a lot of sort of one night stays, I don't think it made it appealing for me to look into Airbnb, because some of the Airbnbs, there's a minimum 2-3 night stays, depending on the location. But yeah, you are right, especially in Europe, like France and Italy, Airbnbs like pretty much dominating, especially in rural areas, where there's no hotels and stuff. And I've done a few weddings abroad, destination weddings. So that's Airbnb was kind of the go-to, really.
Right.
So I was familiar with Airbnb, I just never used it in the UK. So that's obviously the model that I've used for the property.
So how did you, how did you first realise that might be better renting your house through Airbnb? Was that on the training with Samuel or before?
No, it was on the training. I hadn't even heard of serviced accommodation until I actually went to the advanced training, and even then, I wasn't actually convinced this was a strategy.
It sounds like a lot of work when you first hear about it.
Yeah.
Until you realise about all the ways to systemize it.
Yeah. It's a lot of work, but not only that, you're not sure if it's actually going to work or not. Because obviously,
there's a bit more risk.
Because you have to do your due diligence yourself. You have to research that, and obviously we're told how to do that on the advanced training. But for you to actually, because for me, especially if you live in the city that you're doing your research on, and especially if you've been born and you've been brought up there, you'll have this sometimes negative bias.
Yeah.
About where you live.
No one's going to want to visit my hometown.
Yeah. So I was battling that, and it wasn't until I spoke to other mentors and academy members that I thought I have to give this a go. And it's always separating any risk into best case, worst case, likely case scenario, and that's something I never really thought about, structuring it like that. And so hence why I just thought I just need to go for it. So I learned about serviced accommodation on the training.
So if you hadn't heard about it before, what did you go to see Samuel for?
Building wealth, buying property, and then
like doing BRR.
And BRRs,
that's sort of what you got started.
That, and I thought I had to save up my own money. It would have taken me 3-4 years to save up for a deposit, or however long it would have taken. And so, just going on the training just opened my eyes, really. I just never knew what bridging finance was, investor finance. You just never have the confidence, really, to approach investors regarding that. So, it was just like, it was quite overwhelming, I'll be honest. It was overwhelming, especially if you don't know anything about properties. I knew obviously what a mortgage was, and in principle I knew how it worked, but when it comes to bridging and getting a mortgage at the end, you don't really understand that. That's quite a
it's I guess we're not conditioned to think about property that way. And I mean, a lot of people think, oh yeah, property is a good investment. They'd love to get into it and stuff. But all they know about it is what they watch on TV and like Homes Under the Hammer and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they all focus on flips and or buy to let, you know,
vanilla buy to lets.
Yeah. And they simplify it and dumb it down.
Yeah.
Whereas those are just not. There's so much more. There's so much more possibilities, especially when it comes to the finance and stuff. They don't get into the finance. That's what they dumb down, you know. When it comes to financing and bridging and stuff like that. I mean, I haven't done bridging yet, so I'm just getting into rent to rent now for the first time. And I'm similar to you, really. I'd never. I was already doing BRR, and I sort of joined. I went to see Samuel Leeds to sort of maybe start doing deal sourcing, and you know, and to get more. I worked with a company, and so I'd been completely hands off on my BRRs.
Yeah.
And I thought I'd join the academy to kind of learn how to be more hands on and do more myself to save the fees and things. Yeah. And then maybe do some deal sourcing to give you some money to keep buying more.
Yeah.
Again, so I've learned, and I'd heard of service accommodation, but I'd sort of ruled it out. It's like, oh, that's too much work. You've got to go in and change the sheets and stuff. So, and rent to rent just didn't really make sense because it's like you're renting out someone else. There can't be that much margin in there. Yeah. You know, but now but then since then the interest rates have gone up, which have totally squeezed the margins on buy to let. So, I need to improve my cash flow. So I'm getting into rent to rent now.
Yeah, and a lot of us are, you know, if we don't understand the model and how it works, you are skeptical, and I was skeptical. I even remember having a call with the mentors, and they were like, you've got to be convinced yourself that it works, because you can't sell deals on serviced accommodation
if you don't believe
if you're not sold yourself. So that took me a while to get over, and there was a lot of unlearning. So apart from learning the strategies and finance, there was a lot of unlearning as well. So knowing what good debt and bad debt is, and liabilities and assets, that was massive for me. You know, it was huge.
Right.
And you don't get taught that in school or anything like that.
Have you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
I haven't.
Oh, have you not?
I have not. No, I'm more of an audiobook kind of guy. So I signed up to Audible back in September last year. So I've bought sort of audiobooks. So that is on my list. Funny you say that, actually. One of the advanced training that we did, I don't know if they still do this, but you had to ring a family member and get them to buy a product. I don't know if they still do that on the training or not.
I don't know.
But I had to ring my nephew. So it was an exercise where you couldn't leave the room until you sold something. Like, it could have been anything. Like, you could sell, if you owned a business, you could sell something, or you could order something online, but you couldn't order it yourself. You had to ring someone. And I think it was part of the deal selling kind of exercise. So I had to ring. So I rang my nephew and I told him about this book, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And he had just become a dad, actually, recently. Right. So I said, oh, this will be perfect for you. So I was just selling him the book. And he goes, yeah, that sounds good. I'll order it tomorrow. And I said, no, you have to order it now. Like, it's on offer. It's on Amazon. Order it now. It'll get delivered for tomorrow. I'm back from the training next week, and I'll pick up the copy, and then I'll read it as well. So that was part of the exercise. So I've not got down to picking the book up, but I do definitely need to.
But
get the audio
that's a really
version.
good introduction to all those things you're talking about. You know, good debt and bad debt. And assets and liabilities. Although he has a sort of different definition of an asset and a liability, like the dictionary definition and what they teach you at kind of, I don't know, business school or whatever. Or an accountant would say an asset is something you can sell, something that's worth something that you can sell. But he but he has a sort of different take on what an asset is, like something that produces cash flow.
Cash flow, yeah.
So he says, no, your home is not an asset; it's a liability because it costs you money.
Yeah.
So a lot of people will say, no, he's wrong, but he's making a point.
Yeah.
And
well, that's why a lot of couples, or even anyone that is looking to buy and save up for a house, a lot of the renting. And I always thought this: why would you rent a property? Why not just buy it? But now that you've gone through the training and you think, well, actually, if you're in a position where you haven't got responsibilities and you want a bit of flexibility, renting's fine. Like you can save the money and put it into other businesses, like Rent to SA, and still have a nice house, still live where you want to live. And I think now I would think, there's nothing wrong with renting, but going back 2 years, I think, well, renting's silly. Like, why would you waste money?
Yeah.
But
another important
sense.
concept that doesn't talk about it much in Rich Dad Poor Dad is the time value of money. So it's like money is more valuable now than it is in the future.
Yeah.
So it's worth, renting or not paying off your mortgage if you're going to reinvest that money that you save.
Yeah, it's about reinvesting.
Yeah, because just paying off the mortgage and just putting more, tying up money, tying up capital in a property.
Yeah.
It might give you some peace of mind and stuff to be debt free or whatever, but there's better things you can do with the money.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with like repaying your mortgage off and having equity in the house or whatever property you have. Even, and you'll probably find out later on, but with bridging finance, having a property that has equity, you can use that as leverage.
Yeah.
And you can get better rates, like lower rates on interest. You can get development finance because they're using your house.
And it's good for like your credit rating.
Yeah. So there's pros and cons. I just think you need to know what your options are.
Yeah.
And just use the right tools at the right time.
Yeah. But I got a friend, I used to work at Amazon, and he was sort of one of my team leaders. And Amazon opened a new place in Swindon, and we all moved from the Bristol one to Swindon. And he bought a house, and he was saying, I'm doing as much overtime as I can, and I'm making as many overpayments as I can on the mortgage to pay it off as quickly as possible. And I was already doing property at the time on the side. So I was like, no, borrow as much as you can and only pay, and just interest only. Like, completely opposite opinion. So people do have this fear of debt.
Yeah, they do.
It's we're programmed to.
We are programmed, and I think buying liabilities as well. That's a big one. Like buying a car, you're just so tempted to just buy a car from your savings when you just could invest that money into assets, which then can pay for your car.
I did that.
Yeah.
But I've got a different excuse.
Go on, let's hear it.
So I was investing very heavily in Tesla.
Okay.
From like 2017.
Okay.
I had most of my like life savings in Tesla because I really believed in it.
Yeah.
And through like 2019, 2021, it just went crazy.
Yeah.
And I was doing really, really well. And so I bought the share price when I bought was like 200, 300, that sort of range. And it got to 1,500. So I'd done really well. And I said to myself, if it gets to 2,500, I'll buy a Tesla. Thinking that might be a couple of years away.
Yeah.
But it just kept going. It was like a month or less than a month between when it was 1,500 to 2,500.
Wow.
So when it did that, I was like, well, I've got to buy a Tesla then.
Time to reward yourself. Yeah.
So, but the share price move from 1,500 to 2,500 more than paid for the Tesla.
Yeah.
But I still would be better off if I hadn't done that.
Yeah.
Because it did keep going a little bit more after that, but then it came right back down.
Yeah.
But now it's gone back up again. So I still think Tesla's a good investment. Because they've got some exciting things with the full self-driving and the humanoid robots, which are going to. I think that when you look at the really good investments in the past, like Apple would have been a good investment.
Yeah.
Amazon would have been a great investment if you got in early.
Yeah.
I think things that have the potential to change the world, and it looks like the world is moving in that direction.
Yeah.
I think those make really good investments.
Yeah,
And the whole EV thing, electric cars were what people were what caused the change when people started to realize they're way better. And that was what caused the move between 2019 and 2021. So you could say, oh yeah, now that's past. You've missed it. But Tesla's got new things. Tesla's got two things that have the potential to sort of that same world changing potential in the pipeline. So there's the self-driving cars, which still people don't believe is ever going to happen, but it is on our doorstep.
Yeah, it is.
And the humanoid robots, which is another thing that just seems totally sci-fi. But
the
iPhone seemed sci-fi in 2010.
Yeah, I mean, who would think you would?
Or was it? No, when did it come out?
20,
anyway,
2008, 7.
Yes, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So 2005,
2007.
something like an iPhone.
Yeah,
So it would have been,
and even like streaming, like we would never think we would be streaming music, because obviously you'd go out and buy a DVD, a CD or a cassette, and it was tangible. You kind of owned it almost. But
And I almost dreamed of like having a big library of DVDs,
and
CDs. And
exactly.
Stuff. Now I don't want anything.
Yeah, now it's just like everything's just available on your phone.
Yeah.
And it, like when I was a kid, like we used to go to Blockbuster, horror video, and then take
and
it
it
back.
would take the whole evening to sort of go
Yeah.
there and go back and watch the
Yeah.
video.
And then Netflix, and I think at one point Netflix approached Blockbuster for a collaboration, and they just laughed in their face.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show. Yeah.
There's a really good interview with the founder of Netflix. It might be it's either Diary of a CEO or Modern Wisdom podcast.
Yeah.
Where he talks about all that. He says, but they were this was like just during or before or just after the .com bubble bursting.
Yeah.
And that was when they really needed finance. They almost went bankrupt.
That's right. Yeah.
But Blockbuster had the possibility to take them over for like $2 million. I think.
Yeah, they did. Yeah. It's
and
madness.
A few years later, it puts them out of business.
Yeah, it's madness. But technology's changing, and I think and everyone's taking a risk at some point. In business, and I think for me, how it relates to my property journey is that you have to take a calculated risk, and I'm not saying just blindly go for anything. You do your research, but at some point you just have to just go all in.
Yeah, you have to take the risk.
Yeah,
and just see what happens.
Yeah,
but you've got to remember that things aren't necessarily permanent. You can always try things out, and if it doesn't work, just change it back.
Yeah, definitely. And I think I'm at the point now where I'm confident in the strategies, how they work, and things are going to change. You're going to get potentially licensing with serviced accommodation, which I think is a really good thing, because there's a lot of cowboy kind of people out there that are running serviced accommodation.
Yeah.
And they're not doing things in a safe way. And I think if those get flushed out, even better. I think it'll just make the industry even better than it already is. Same with obviously HMO.
Well, it depends what the regulations are, because they might eat into your profits a lot.
Yeah, I think Scotland introduced it a while back, and it has put a lot of people off. Doing serviced accommodation in Scotland.
Just as long as it doesn't take away the opportunity. If they say, if they do something like an Article 4, so you can't do it in certain areas, where it would be really good, then to me it's just messing with the free market, and that never works.
Yeah.
And there's likely to be some form of corruption if there's because the hotel companies would lobby to not allow service accommodation anywhere near them.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So as long as it is something that is good for the business and not not giving into corruption.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. That is a fair point. Yeah, I can understand where you're coming from there. I think if you look at HMOs now and Article 4, like for example Derby, I think Derby is introducing Article 4 or is in the process of it. But I think it's just it just depends where you are on your journey really, and
because
it can be a good thing or a bad thing.
I don't think it affects service accommodation, but if you're doing ASTs, they've got selective licensing thing, but it's only in certain areas, but it's going to get more widespread. That's something that in theory, they say it's to improve the quality of and raise standards. And maybe it does, but I mean, I've got one property in County Durham where I've had to pay selective licensing, and no one's come to check anything. Although, to be fair, I did get invited to some events, some training things, but the number of landlords there are in Durham, and it's I don't know. It just seems like a money grab. And the councils really need the money, so you wouldn't put it past them. So you've got 5 SAs. One of them you own. And then 4 rent-to-rents. And now, are you looking to get more rent-to-rents, or are you thinking now you've got enough cash flow, but you want to actually build your own portfolio more?
So I did think, I'll be happy with just having, 4 or 5, but I think now
you got the bug.
I think I want more now. And I just had a call with my accountant the other day, 'cause I'm bringing my wife on board as well. She wants to get involved, and I think we want to get to the point where we're both having cash flow and income coming in. I'm still going to look for properties to buy, but obviously, as you know, buying properties and the whole BRR process is fairly slow. It can take 6 months plus really to see anything. So I think I still
want to do that long term.
Because
I was thinking the other day, I mean, rent to rent is so good. We just had Kane on yesterday, and we're talking through, not yesterday, earlier today, and we were talking through some of the numbers. And the return on investment on some rent to rent to SA or even HMO is really, really good.
It is good,
And I was thinking, I sort of went through my mind, if I just compounded and just reinvested everything, I calculated I could make like £60 million in the next 10 years or something. But I would never actually own anything. All that 60 million would come to me in rent in the last year. And obviously it would be impossible because I would need thousands of properties probably by that point to get to that level. But at any point in that time, the government could pass some law that makes it illegal, and I have to just give them all up.
Exactly.
And then I have nothing. I do want to get a few to improve my cash flow, because BRR doesn't cash flow very well. But I still think it's important for the long-term wealth generation to actually be owning
100%. Like, even with rent to rent, you're renting a property from a landlord. You don't own it. You don't really want to be doing anything major with it in terms of refurb. And at the end of the day, after your 3 or 5 year contract ends, the landlord might just want it back. So you'd have to hand the keys back. So obviously at that point, you'd already be cash flowing positively. It's not something that's permanent. And I would say for anyone that wants to do rent to rent, I would just use it as another tool to kind of increase cash flow up until you can start investing that money into your own assets, buy your own properties, and just use that same serviced accommodation model or HMO model that you've done with rent to rent, but just apply that to your own properties. So it's just
you're
a case
still
of
getting the higher levels of rent.
It's just basically transferring whatever experience and skills that you've had from one to the other.
Mm.
And then you can let go of the rent.
So are you looking for BRRs to SA already?
Yeah, I'm quite active in
Okay.
looking now. Just speaking to agents, pre-auction offers like auction houses, and just having a chat with them. And just kind of doing the numbers, and it's a numbers game really, Same with rent to rent, when you pick up the phone, it's just about.
And are you looking for like a really good deal, or are you, because there's loads of deals that stack.
They do, yeah.
But then there's some deals that stack way better. So you're sort of holding out for something really good, or
no? I'm happy to leave a little bit of money in the deal when it comes to BRRs, especially if you know the exit's going to be serviced accommodation or HMO, and you're going to get super rent.
Because a lot of people talk about these all money out deals, but they are, and you can do it. But I think it's hard if you're not doing something to significantly improve the value of the property, like an extension or commercial to resi. Yeah, conversion.
And also a lot of, I find in my experience, a lot of unicorn all money out deals, they're usually off market. Majority of them are off market, and I don't mind leaving a bit of money in there. I know that if I do it as a serviced accommodation, I'm going to make.
You might leave 5-10K in, but you'll make that in 6 months.
Even if I left 20K in the deal, I'll get it back in 2 years. It's not a problem.
Yeah, that's
a free house after 2 years. Do you know what I mean? It's not that bad really when you think about it. So I think sometimes our expectations are probably too high, and we do compare ourselves to other people. And maybe there were more money out deals 5 years ago than there were now. I don't know. I wasn't in the industry then, so I can't really compare it. But yeah, I'd be more than happy to just leave a little bit of money in the deal when it comes to refinancing. As long as I own the asset, that's the main thing. I think that's
So you're sort of balancing the amount you get out or the amount you leave in with the cash flow that you're going to be getting. Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah.
If it was a buy-to-let, standard buy-to-let, I would want, I'd probably leave maximum 5-6 grand in there, like max. Not even that, actually, probably about 2-3 grand. But if it was serviced accommodation or HMO, I'm more than happy to leave, double, triple that. So I think having knowing the strategies and how they work is crucial, really, because you can always put in a higher offer sometimes as well.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm at.
If you find a property that's going to be a really good SA, then you can sort of outbid someone who might be looking at it as a single let.
Exactly. Yeah. So great. I think knowing your market, knowing your patch, really important. And if you've got serviced accommodation in a specific area, I think it makes sense to then buy properties in that area as well, because then you can just, once your contract finishes with the rent to rent, you can just literally move your business model across if you wanted to.
So we talked about Samuel Leeds, and one of the great things about Samuel Leeds Academy is the networking and the inner circles. Yeah. And one of them you run.
That's right.
And we're actually going to have to cut this off because you've got to get off to set things up there.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
So I'll see you there in a bit. Is there anything else you want to say? How can people get hold of you if they want to? Yeah,
so I'm available on Instagram, Property by Jag. Yeah, you can find me on there. I've got some behind the scene videos of what I've done in the past, with doing a little refurb, serviced accommodation, some of the challenges as well I faced with running it. You don't really tend to see a lot of that online. And it's, every business I think has challenges, and it's just finding a solution really. But it's that's kind of the main channel you can find me on.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. I hope you found this helpful. Let us know what you think in the comments below. And as I was saying earlier, yes, like and subscribe to the channel. Give it a thumbs up and all that. It does help for the algorithm. But the best thing to do if you want to become self-unemployed and financially free is to sign up to my mailing list. I don't send a lot of emails, only when I have some great content like this to share with you, which I truly believe will help you on your journey. So yeah, make sure you subscribe to the mailing list, and why not check out one of my other videos while you're here. See you soon.